Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I, Ken, read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to, once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through, and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. Our next letter comes from Erica, and though I haven't read the entirety of the letter, I skipped to the end because occasionally, and this has happened to me once before, someone asked me at the very end, oh, can you please bring one of your team members to the letter reading? And I forgot on that occasion, and I had to reread the entire letter again, which, it doesn't always happen. But on this occasion, when I skipped to the end just to make sure I hadn't missed any requests for team members, it was really funny. Erica wrote to me, she was like, I want you to at least say fuck you to my ex at least once. That would make my day. And I thought, you've caught me on a fantastic day because I've been having disputes left, right, and center today, and I'm really worked up. So if someone gets to take on my unhealthy anger in this context, let it be your ex because he can be a punching bag for my frustration. If anyone has gone through banking disputes, you will know what I'm talking about. Anyways, let's keep moving on. All right. Erica writes, Dear Ken, I believe I've been with almost exclusively avoidance throughout my dating life, and over the past 4 years, I dated 3. In 2021, I went through a relationship obsessive compulsive disorder, blindsiding discard after a year-long relationship that devastated me. But I learned from it to ask about a person's breakup history and see if they love as a choice before getting into a serious relationship. Oh, sorry, if they see love as a choice before getting into a serious relationship. That's how I dodged another massive heartbreak in 2022 when I detected my date was a severe fearful avoidant based on their answers and knew a relationship with him was not tenable. I'm curious to find out what that questioning might look like now. I want to know what questions you asked because I find relationship history isn't always a reliable metric for someone's capability to show up in a relationship. But if you've got a really good system in place, please share it if you feel called to it, Erica. Anyways, it is my most recent breakup that has left me obsessing over what I missed and why I missed it. I know this is far from the most dramatic example you've had on your show, but I think that makes it all the more bewildering. Nothing outrageous stands out to me, and it has left me combing through the details for clues. Well, sometimes I actually like the less, dramatic cases. The dramatic cases have their place because obviously people have gone through some pretty severe stuff. But, every now and then it's actually really good to talk about the less obvious stuff because subtle crap can still give us, you know, extreme challenges because we question ourselves wondering, did I really go through something that bad or that significant? And the answer is yes. It just wasn't as maybe explosive as other, experiences have been. Anyways, let's call my ex Ben. I met Ben in 2022 and we became friends. Over the next year, we hung out often in the same friend group. And in 2023, I invited him to my birthday party. It was there that we began to have an intimate conversation, and before I knew it, I had forgotten that anyone else was in the room. Now, as we went our separate ways, that night he said we should hang out again soon. I tried to link up with him a few days later, but that didn't pan out and he didn't get back to me. Because of this, I jokingly referred to him as my new avoidant to my friend. Oh, that's hilarious. It wasn't until several months later that he finally reached out to me and asked to see me. When I asked why he disappeared, he told me that he'd quit his job, moved back in with his dad, and gotten busy with school and his job search. To me, that was a set of stresses that reasonably might cause someone to go quiet, and so I let go of my suspicion of avoidance. Oh, I'm not. I'm not going to let go of that. And I'll tell you why. He had every opportunity to just text you and be like, hey, this is where I'm at. I did say I want to meet you soon, but I've got some stuff coming up. And he could have also just said, listen, I let that stuff get in my way and I didn't allow myself to reach out to you, and I'm really sorry. He could have simply just said, he could have found ways to not let things get in the way of connecting with you. In this day and age, there seems to be this polarizing argument. We have our phones on us 24/7. Nobody has to get back to you within like 24 hours if they don't want to, right? And I think there is something that's missing in these extremes, which is if we look at the evidence and we just sit back and observe and look at what's going on, Ben allowed his life to get in the way of interacting with you. It does not mean that he didn't go through some difficult times. It doesn't mean that he didn't have stuff that was going on that was reasonable. Yes, he did. He absolutely has had reasonable stuff going on. However, what was stopping him from just simply communicating, life is a bit busy right now. Can I get back to you once it all settles down a bit? And he didn't. So when I see this, I want to share an example. It is like when you have someone who wants to join a company. They're really enthusiastic and they present well in the work interview. They join your company, and then even though they're telling you how devoted they are, how much they want to be there, they are not coming to work on time. They're also not doing the right things for the business. They're poor in replying to people. They're also not showing up in a way that fits the standard of what's meant to be there. They're very hard to contact. They are difficult to communicate with. And when you bring this to this person's attention, they just say, oh, it's just the fact that I struggle to fit into a workplace environment like this. That's the reason that I behave this way. And you might give them a chance. Be like, okay, fair enough. That might be a legitimate reason for this. And yet their behavior continues and things just become increasingly more frustrating. And you bring it up again, and they still show you that they're doing the best that they can. Can't you see how much they've tried to make this work? And they get angry because they feel like you're picking on them and you're being unfair. No. What's going on is that the person you have hired has active resistance to being there. They may, on one hand, want to be there. I don't doubt the devotion they have to being there, but I doubt that they are fully on board with being there, which means that they allow their subconscious stuff, their resistance, their, whatever's going on, to stop them from fully showing up and investing in whatever it is you're doing. And when they come up with a legitimate seeming excuse, oh, it's communication, oh, it's work, oh, it's, my phone wasn't working at the time. It's not actually about that. Yes, that's true. There might be all that going on, but they're allowing that stuff to stop them from taking the next step and just being like, listen, I've got some difficulties with regards to what I'm going through right now. I'm just letting you know so you're in the loop. They're making a choice. And that's where I look at cases like this and go, no, it's not about the communication. It's not about your phone. In this case with Ben, it's not about, what was it again? It was his job, moving back with his dad, getting busy with school. Okay, so we'll call it busyness, right? And stress. I believe that all of that is true, but he's allowing that to get in the way of connecting with you. I can hear someone probably saying, But why should we selfishly expect someone to make us the center of their world? It's not about that. It's not about us believing that we are somehow worthy of a single person's time when they have all these other competing priorities on. I'm not here to deny any of that. I'm here to say this person has what I call inner conflict. They simultaneously desire you, but I can sense they are also resisting allowing themselves to take that next step and actually work towards facilitating and connecting and creating a relationship with you. That's what I sense is going on. How do I know? I've been around the bush. I've seen this sort of stuff play out many times. Inner conflict can get in the way of a lot of stuff. And so when you say, I let go of my suspicion of avoidance, I am fully on board with the fact that he may be indeed your new avoidant. So let's keep going. The next few times we got together, we were absorbed in each other. We had a shared religion, the same controversial politics, common interest in social issues, close values, and similar worldviews. I found myself telling Ben things that I had never said out loud, and it felt natural. Our conversations felt deep and vulnerable. He was attentive, enthusiastic, initiative taking, and responsive to my texts in between meetings, and his actions seemed to match his words. Now, despite this, I felt extremely anxious, and I wondered if my own fearful attachment was being activated by his secure behavior. On the night we finally kissed, he was so excited that he asked me to be his date to a wedding that was 5 months away. I replied, yes, given we're still going to be dating by that point in time. Okay, pause. Cute. I really hope that that wedding pans out. I haven't read the full letter to know if it does or it doesn't, but I hope that isn't a case of future faking. I mean, look, you got some cute stuff going on together. Same controversial politics. I want to know what that was about. Common interest in social issues, close values, and similar worldviews. I love everything you're saying. There's just seemingly some good stuff here, but you're feeling anxious. Curious to know where the anxiety was coming from and why you were feeling what you were feeling. If you were my client, I'd be like, what's going on here? What's anxiety saying to you? Doesn't necessarily mean to say that the guy is, not good for you. It's just, I always get really curious by anxiety. I always find it really fascinating why it flares up from time to time. You mentioned it could have been because he was secure. That's a very real thing. But I'm curious to know what your anxiety was telling you. It'd be interesting to hear if you can reflect back on that, Erica. Anyways, over the next 2 weeks, we went on proper dates and had long phone calls. I asked Ben about his dating history, his views on love, and his relationship to his parents. Despite being nearly 30 years old, he'd never had a girlfriend. And when I asked why, he told me that he'd spent a good chunk of his 20s discerning about whether or not he should enter a monastery. In response to what love is, he quoted scripture about couples praying together in the Bible. His mother had died from cancer just 2 years earlier, and they'd had a pretty strained relationship, though he deeply loved and admired her. He said he felt mostly resolved about her death, but speculated that he might be repressing grief. Okay, so I have nothing against people who use the Bible for allegory and also for a basis of spiritual faith. I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum. However, the Bible may not translate to real experiences of love and how it feels for us. And what I mean by that is when we truly invest in someone, whether or not the person is, you know, secure or not, it can be very challenging for our nervous system. And so please bear in mind that when I hear this, it makes me wonder if Ben had a grounded idea of love. Because if he's basing it on the Bible, that's almost a bit like potentially basing it on an author's depiction of love without really knowing what it feels like, which is not to say that he couldn't learn to love, but I worry that he may not know how to navigate love. So that's a thought that I have there on that one. Interesting stuff about the mum. Sorry that obviously he had a very strained relationship with the mum, but yeah, I wonder if that came out with some enmeshed issues as well. Ben was a gifted economics student, but he settled for a job as an accountant and was pursuing his professional certification. I mentioned attachment styles to him, and he wasn't familiar with them, but he seemed curious. He'd never been to therapy, but told me he would be willing if the need arose. Oh, great. So he's obviously mentioned that he's repressing grief potentially, and he thinks that if the need arises, he'll go. Something suggests to me that he doesn't realize that his need might actually be greater than he thinks it is. I brought up flaws and he thoughtfully acknowledged that he struggles with catastrophizing. Oh dear, bit of an overthinker. He's got that air energy in him. Air as in zodiac signs. Overall, he came off to me as self-aware and mature. Toward the end of the second date, he told me how special I was to him. Now, I had expressed some of my anxiety to him and he told me I would never lie to you. He then mentioned how he was already thinking about plans to introduce me to his family. I asked him if that meant I was his girlfriend, and we decided together that yes, it did. It felt like things were moving fast, but as we'd already been friends for 2 years, it was acceptable. Fair enough. The one thing I'm a little bit concerned about, and it goes back to my inner conflict TED talk from before, was it's interesting how he was saying, you asked him if he was going to be okay with you being his girlfriend. And I'm not about to make a whole argument that the man should initiate whether his girl should be a girlfriend or not. No, I'm not so provincial to have that belief. But I do worry that, you know, again, I feel like there's some conflict inside of him. Part of him obviously does want this, but I feel like there's some resistance from his side. So that's just a observation. The next few months, as far as the relationship goes, were nothing short of blissful. While the rest of my life was a bit hellish due to quitting an abusive job at which I lost all my savings, being with Ben was a joyful respite each weekend. Fair enough, and I'm sorry that you had that experience because that's terrible, Erica. We both lived at our parents' houses, about an hour apart, so we could meet in the middle. Now, despite the challenges of distance and also the strain I was experiencing financially, he was patient. We were both determined to move to our own spaces in the city as soon as possible to be near each other. He invited me to be his plus one to another wedding just a week apart from the first. He bought us tickets to a concert 6 months away. We made plans to travel together over the summer and even discussed plans over the winter. I was thoroughly convinced of Ben's dedication to me and that he planned for me to be in his life for a long time. This was particularly reinforced on his 30th birthday while we were drinking together. During a truth-telling game, I told him that I felt he was limiting himself with short goals in the short term and encouraged him to dream big for his future in the long term. After the game, he held me and looked me in the eyes and would tell me how I was the happiest thing in his life, if not the only happy thing. He said I was beautiful, amazing, and always on his mind. I believe him. I do worry a little bit that could be a bit of idealizing because it makes me wonder, bro, like, do you not have other sources of happiness? Which is not to say that Erica doesn't deserve to be, you know, a portion of your happiness, a huge portion, in fact, but it just sort of feels a bit, it like for a guy who, reckons he's got his belief of love from the Bible, this sort of feels like he's taken a very left turn because lest we forget, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there no love higher than the love you have for God? I'm not quoting that probably accurately, but my spiritual belief on that would be not to say that the love you have for yourself, the love that we have for an internal source of spirit, source, God, whoever we choose to believe in, should be greater than the love that we have for another human being. But I sort of feel like we're in a little bit of fantasying, idealizing from Ben. So I worry that it's not a grounded love, put it that way. Anyways, let's continue. Despite this, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Okay, so anxiety strikes again. Again, I wondered if my own trauma was being activated, and I wondered if it was something spiritual or if it was my mental illness. I wondered if I was just bothered that we'd had different views on political activism, though we agreed on the issues. I wondered if I was settling. I wrote Ben a letter where I expressed that despite my anxiety, I wanted to choose him. Good on you. And I told him that I loved him. I said in the letter that he didn't have to say it back until he felt ready. Okay. Interesting, giving him a lot of space. The next week, he told me he hadn't known how to respond to that and that he wasn't yet ready, but that it meant a lot to him. I told him I understood and I could wait, despite the fact that I was freaking out inside. Okay, so you definitely, I think to me, something came out here. I'm wondering if that feeling of freaking out is consistent with the anxiety you've been feeling. And I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the fact that you felt like maybe I don't feel like this man is fully on board. Just floating that out there as an idea. I could be wrong. But if you're listening to this, Erica, and you would be like, yes, it was, I want you to tell me because I'm curious. I was too afraid to imagine a future with him despite all our plans and his promises. I decided to tell Ben in detail about how my ex with relationship OCD discarded me in 2021, how his final episode had been triggered by a wedding we attended in the early summer together, how he blindsided me over the phone the day before I left for my annual family beach vacation, and how this made me afraid to trust people to stay. Ah. He was so compassionate about it and made me feel understood and accepted in a way I'd rarely felt. I'm worried. Is he gonna discard you like what happened like back in 2021? Because that sometimes happens. In the third month, we met each other's parents. My family really liked Ben, and he baked my mother special gluten-free chocolate chip cookies to show his gratitude. Cute. Seeing Ben's interactions with his dad was a little off-putting. Ben seemed strained and standoffish. His father told me that Ben had kept me a secret from him until weeks after we started dating. This surprised me, as I'd been telling my father about Ben for weeks before we started dating. But his dad reassured me that he just likes to give his kids their space and let them come to him without prying. He told me I must be awfully special for Ben to have come out of his shell for me. Mm. On our 4th month anniversary, Ben was so tender. We laid together in the grass and he kept kissing my head. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say, I feel like Ben is very young. Like, I'm not trying to invalidate the love that you guys have. It's very cute. Like, it's very, mushy and tender. But I feel like he's a baby. I feel like energetically and emotionally, I'm like, this guy is he's like a little crab. He's got like, even though he's hard on the outside, he's really soft on the inside. Maybe a turtle is the better analogy. But yeah, the energy and the vibe I'm getting is this guy's a little crusty cupcake. Looks a bit chunky on the outside, but is full of just gluten on the inside with nice soft flour that just melts in your mouth. Anyways, now that that image has been taken out of everyone's minds, let's go back to this. To my surprise and delight, he told me at that moment, I love you. I said it back to him, and he said it back to me again. We kissed, and I was giggling with joy. He told me, I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. I'm excited to explore what love means, and I want to do that with you. Then we walked back to his car, and he surprised me with a set of wood carvings that he'd brought from craftsmen at his parish. The funds were going to a cause for which we had done activism together, which made them all the more meaningful. I saw them as a token of his love. We then went to dinner and discussed details for the weddings we were attending, which were just 2 weeks away. I knew I wouldn't see him for those 2 weeks as I'd been attending my family's annual beach trip. Before I left to go to the church, we kissed one last time and I told him, I love you. He replied, I love you too. Uh-oh, don't tell me this is when, I'm assuming a shutdown's coming. Over the next week, we continued to send each other good morning and good night texts per usual. I tried to come and see him spontaneously at work one day, but that didn't work out. I also asked him if he could meet me for dinner one night, and he said, oh dear, he said he was too busy with homework to do that. So instead, he gave me a phone call. It had been my last day at a draining job, and my mental health had been crap recently. On the phone call, I had little to say, but then I made a bleakly nihilistic quip, and Ben seemed at a loss for words. I started crying and told him I was so sorry. I didn't want to come across as boring or depressing to him. This may have been the most vulnerable I'd ever been with him about my mental struggles. He reassured me that he still very much liked me and then helped distract me from my dark thoughts. At the end of the call, I told him, I love you, and he replied, I love you too. I have witnessed experiences like this with people who date avoidance, where there's this real fear almost to open up and actually share some of those unsavory parts of yourself. And the fact that there's that fear of coming across as boring or depressing, I know that anxiety all too well. And that is a real telltale sign that you might be with someone where your body's like, just keep it cool, just keep it fluffy, keep it light, keep it fun. And that usually, I think, is a survival strategy that often meant we've been growing up with emotionally unavailable people who just can't handle that sort of stuff. Something about the way you describe it makes me think that his reaction to your nihilistic quip, as you called it, triggered you. Like it sounds to me like you mentioned that it triggered him and his reaction triggered you. Makes me think you felt like, oh no, the connection's just been impacted by my emotions. I want to just say here, if you have your nihilistic quips, turn them into nihilistic essays, within reason, of course. I'm all here for a little bit of that every now and then. I know that we're not here to necessarily, overwhelm people with lengthy monologues about how mundane and sad life can be at all times, because, that's when we get a little bit addicted to our depressive thoughts and feelings. But I think that there's something about the way you've written this which makes me feel like it's, you know, you just shared a little bit of that, and he got quite bugged out by that. And I've worked with clients who've had this almost exact situation, and they've had to explain to their avoidant partner, I'm allowed to feel the way I'm feeling. It's not a bad thing. And they've almost not been able to really comprehend that, probably because of their own insecurities with their emotions. Anyways, we continued to text as I traveled over the next few days, and I sent him a picture from the beach and said, maybe we could sit here together next year. To which he responded, doesn't that sound nice? The next day, I noticed Ben had gone private on X, which was odd. I was working on a drawing to give our friends for their wedding that next weekend, of which he would be the groomsman, and I was sending him updates. He then sent me a text asking if we could have a phone call. I said yes and called him. His tone on the phone was pretty immediately somber. He said, I need to talk about something heavy. I know I'm not good about communicating what I'm thinking, but I've been thinking about my future, and I'm 30, and I still don't know what I want. By not knowing what I want, I know I've often been complacent, and that's hurt me and others. But I do know that I don't see a future for us. Ooh. Yeah, fuck him. I froze, stunned. He said, I'm so sorry. I wish I didn't have to do this over the phone, and I wish it were at a better time, but this was the best time. He kept repeating, I'm so sorry. It sounded like he was about to cry, and all that I could think was, why are you doing this if it's hurting you? A feeling I'm sure many of us can relate to. Oh, that's pretty avoidant. That's pretty avoidant. And it sounds like he also has ROCD. It seems to me like he got stuck. I a really telltale sign for people who suffer from ROCD is this idea of, I just didn't see a future for us. Like, I just couldn't see us in the future together. It's like, maybe that's because you weren't present and you weren't really thinking about how you were feeling in the moment. And often they allow their anxiety to just take them away to Narnia, where they're like, oh, yes, of course, I couldn't see you with the lion, the witch, and the wardrobe. It's like, look, I wasn't expecting to be in a fantasy with you, but I was expecting to be in reality with you. Anyways, I just tried to keep my cool and not shut down. I bet you did. I'm so sorry you're going through this because I can imagine what you were probably feeling like in this moment. That's quite shocking to get, especially in light of the conversation where you had that nihilistic quip before. I could imagine maybe a fear that you'd set him off. No, I reckon this was brewing in the background. I'd asked, did I say something? Yes, let's see. And he replied, no. He reassured me, this has nothing to do with you. You're wonderful. You're beautiful. I know it's cliche, but it's really not you. It's me. I didn't know how to respond. I eventually replied, I was really hoping that if we ever broke up, we'd come to the decision together because this is a relationship I think is worth fighting for. But it sounds like you're not willing. Good on you. He responded, I've made up my mind and there's not much you can say to change it. Oh, great. I was reeling. It was deja vu. Here I was again at the beginning of a beach trip, just weeks from a wedding, on the phone, being blindsided as if it were 2021 all over again. Look, I've already lost someone this way before, and I don't want to lose you like this, I told Ben. I know, and I'm sorry, he replied. I just don't see a future for us. Seems like he doesn't really understand the impact of what he's doing to you. I tried to process this, and so I said, okay. I asked slowly, can you at least give me a reason why you don't see us working out? He responded, I'm not romantically attracted to you. Oh, for fuck's sake. No. You sounded uncomfortable. Wait, I came back. That doesn't make sense. Just 9 days ago, you told me for the first time that you love me. And he replied, I know, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said something I didn't mean. That was a punch to the gut. And I said, ow. Okay. Yeah, to me, I'm like, not okay sort of stuff that he's done at all. And I don't imagine that he's right in what he's saying because he seemed to me, from based on what I'm reading, that he was very into her. So, yeah, not okay. Anyways, Erica writes, can you at least tell me when you started questioning your feelings to me? And he said, oh, I don't know. There wasn't a specific time, he replied. I've been doubting it since the beginning. I was taken aback and I said, okay, that's not what I expected you to say. I admitted. I didn't know what else to say. And I told him, I need time to process this and I might have more questions. Can I give you a call before the end of the week? And he responded, you can try, but I'm not going to promise you something I'm not sure I can give you. Oh, great. So, really hopeless sort of thinking. And then he continued, I think we need to go no contact for a bit. I won't go to any of the events I know you like to attend, and I'll send you a refund for the train tickets to the weddings and some money to cover the dresses you bought. I was silent for a moment, then finally I whimpered, I'm afraid to hang up. I don't want you to suddenly disappear from my life like this. And he replied, I know. I'm sorry. Goodbye, Elise. And he hung up. The phone call lasted about 15 minutes. I saw the refund come in and the cash. I rushed to begin blocking him just to find that he'd already removed me as a follower on X. Horrified, I deleted my account. I promised myself to never look at his socials, and I still haven't, and then I never heard from him again. Oh no. I say that because sometimes it's so important to have some of these people come back just to get a bit of information about, them themselves so we can have a bit of closure. But this is an awful way to have things go because it really does feel like it's just complete, utter banishment. So yeah, oh, that's fucking terrible. And just to say it again, fuck Ben. Oh man. And so not okay. Like, to be honest, this just doesn't feel good at all. Anyways, that night, discussing what happened with a friend, we agreed that this was most likely an avoidant discard. Oh, I wrote Ben a long letter where I laid out my suspicions and encouraged him to seek help, and I closed it with, I don't want you to hurt yourself in the future. I hope you heal. Yeah, well written. I packaged up with the wooden figurines and mailed it to him. I have no idea if he read it. The point of it was closure for me. It wasn't about trying to save him. Good on you. I could imagine that would have been very hard, but it seems like you also had a side of you that was like, this seems textbook to me. It seems like an avoidant discard. Without Ben, I had no plans for the future. Our relationships were all I had going for me. I lost my main connection to a major part of my friend's circle, and I lost my closest friend. He made me feel less isolated, and he also made me feel much more secure in my convictions. Now he's gone. Everything I was working towards suddenly became pointless. I've never felt such futility. I've tried so hard since then to regain my footing and rebuild my life, if only out of spite, but I still get choked up about it in therapy. Again, I ask, what did I miss? Why did I miss it? What is it about me that is attracting avoidance or that is attracting or is attracted to them? I know I'm a stereotypical overachieving neurodivergent perfectionist or whatever. Is that why this hurts so bad? Is that why I haven't been able to go a day without thinking about him for 10 months while he lives his life? How can I preempt this heartbreak in the future? If one more person discards me like this, I think I might crash out. Yeah, well, fair enough. I kind of feel in the same way if it makes you feel any better. Thank you for reading this and accommodating me. Your content has been both comforting and enlightening to me in my grief. I hope you see something I didn't. And even if you don't, hearing you say fuck you to Ben would make my day. Yeah, fuck Ben. Do you know, I actually struggle to say fuck Ben, and I'll tell you why. Yes, he's done something terrible to you, and I'm not here to excuse him or what he's done. Let me start out with the criticism of Ben. I feel he's grossly immature. And it's true, not on a scale that I've seen with other avoidants that I've spoken about on this podcast, but I feel like he's negligent and immature, and he's also not considering the impact of his actions upon you. And I also just don't think that he really appreciates what he's doing and how he's really causing a lot of problems. So, yeah, I worry that this is coming across as how do I put it? I worry that, you know, with Ben, you know, there is a great deal of immaturity from his side, and he's going to hurt people if he continues like this. Like, it seems to me like the short relationships, well, sorry, the non-existent relationships he's had really do speak to a bigger issue within him. So, yeah, that's the sort of stuff that I'm feeling. Now, as for the reason why I'm sort of giving a half-hearted fuck him, I'll tell you why. I do feel a bit sorry for him. Like, I think that I have more compassion for him than I've had for some previous avoidant attachers because, frankly, some of the ones on the severe end have just done my head in because of how vile they've behaved. But there's something about him that feels, outside of the immaturity, that feels just very young, like a very arrested development kind of young. And, you know, I feel sorry for both of you and the relationship you were building because the way you wrote this, it was very young, cute, puppy love sort of stuff. And it's not to describe the puppy love as being superficial or saccharine. It's more just to describe it as it was cute. It was beautiful. Like it really felt like, you were into it. And I think that when he was saying things like, oh, I just don't know if this was going to work out, I had my suspicions and all that, I just sort of feel like he let his anxiety and his insecurities get in the way of what was growing up. And as someone who is no stranger to self-sabotage and also to anxiety getting in the way of shit, all I can say is I think he fucked it. And he's gonna have to live with that. He's really gonna have to live with the decision making that he made. And I think that, it would be tough. It would be tough for him to have that. So I do feel sorry, now that he's got to have that. But at the same time, I don't think he was being completely honest. I think he should have been much more upfront and honest about some of the insecurities he was having. And I actually do believe him when he says he had his doubts at the beginning, because that's why I suspected that when I was talking about inner conflict at the beginning of this letter reading, that's really what I was alluding to, is the fact that I think he's had resistance there for quite a while, and it's only just now cropped up in this particular way. But I do want to say, as you are the one who wrote this letter, and my heart goes out for you and the relationship you've now lost as a consequence, I am really sorry you've had this. It just sucks. This is definitely one of the more not overtly awful, you know, experiences I've read out, but it doesn't deny its impact. And I'm so sorry that you've had to go through this, Erica, because you're obviously no stranger to avoidant breakups. You knew the terminology. As to why you're experiencing this, there can be many things that might relate to this too. And I mean, I can only speculate. In my experience of working through this with myself and with clients, we can usually look and find that the answers lie usually in our past. What a surprise. And some of those things, if you've had repeated experiences where men have, discarded you like this, particularly around betrayal and blindsiding, it makes me think, what's your experience around betrayal and, similar experiences of being discarded been like? What's going on there as well too? Have you experienced, a lot of emotional immaturity growing up with your family? Have you been made to feel like you can't allow yourself to, express your feelings to people? When you were mentioning about the nihilistic quip and your reaction to his reaction to your reaction, it made me think, ooh, there's been some restraint and some self-editing to not set him off in that context, I feel. So, and that stuff didn't sound like it sounded like that was very instinctive to just, retreat the way you did. And also when you cried, understandably, it sounded to me like that was coming from a very concerned place about the connection being, you know, affected by what you had said earlier with that nihilistic quip. It makes me think, I wonder if you've grown up with men who have traditionally been really bad at sitting and validating your emotional experiences. So, to me, when I take a step back, and I hear a lot of the stuff that you've shared with me, I think that there are likely clues in the rubble of this experience. I always like to start with my clients with the feelings that you've got immediately off the back of the aftermath of these, because that's usually the trailhead, as my therapist calls it, for like the deeper stuff. So yeah, I think that there's definitely some clues in this that would be worth looking into. But from the bottom of my heart, I really hope you don't go through another discard. You don't deserve it. You've gone through enough already from the sounds of it. And this sounds like it's really shaken your world. And I'm so sorry you've had this. I've got people I know who've gone through similar experiences like this, and it's just destroyed them. And I will say again, fuck you to Ben, because he was careless, immature, and also didn't handle this well at all. And I think he allowed that sort of like, I know what's best for us attitude to, run the show. Bad idea. Anyways, Erica, thank you for submitting this letter. I love reading this, and I truly I feel sorry for everyone involved, and at the same time, I can be a little bit mad at him for his immaturity. But again, I don't feel the same, sort of justice smiting him, just as I have with others, because I really get the sense that he's, I'm not, again, I don't want to excuse him for his immaturity because that's something we've all got to grow out of, but I just feel like he's a very sensitive little lamb. And again, a dangerous, sensitive little lamb. I wouldn't want to be around him because it's like being around, someone who's obviously not taking care of their own anxieties. And it sounds like he lets his overthinking just run the better of him, and that's irresponsible. Anyways, I hope this has given you some clarity. I hope this has given you some relief. And I'm truly sorry that you've gone through this because like I said, it's just tragic for everyone involved.